This is Quick Flicks. Today I am going to explain episode 1 of the TV medical drama, House. Spoilers ahead. A lacrosse player, Dan, starts suffering from double vision while playing in a game. When he is checked by another player, he falls to the ground and there is blood all over his face. His trainer runs over to him, but Dan is unresponsive and the trainer calls for a doctor. Gregory House is reading gossip magazines in the clinic when James Wilson finds him hiding in an exam room. House has 5 minutes until he can leave and doesn't want to treat someone who will take half an hour to pamper. Wilson asks him why he doesn't just tell Cuddy he has an urgent case, but House replies he has no cases right now. Wilson is incredulous that House and his team have no cases. Meanwhile, Allison Cameron is answering mail while Robert Chase does a crossword puzzle with help from Eric Foreman. When House tries to leave the clinic, he finds a man and a woman with a letter, addressed from House, that says he would take his son's case. When House sees the letter, he confronts Cameron about forging his signature. She describes the case and House gets interested in the night terrors the patient is going through. He agrees to see the family, against his usual procedure. He examines the patient, who has barely slept for 3 weeks. When the patient is asked to name animals starting with the letter B, he can only think of baby elephant. House thinks it is either post-traumatic stress disorder or sexual abuse. Dan denies abuse, but he admits he was hit in the head during lacrosse, but notes that he had double vision before he was hit. House chides Cameron for not knowing about the trauma. The parents object. The emergency room did a full set of scans on Dan and found no concussion, but House is unswayed and tells him to see an ophthalmologist. Cameron objects, but House says she's just objecting because she thinks his dismissive behavior is a reaction to how she brought him into the case. Based on her acting like everything is about her, he surmises that she's an only child, which she denies. House looks into the exam room and he notices a twitch in Dan's leg, a myoclonic jerk which only happens in people who are about to fall asleep. House is intrigued and orders him admitted. They start a differential. Foreman is worried it is neurological, in which case it can't be treated. House rules out Chase's suggestion of infection. House also thinks that the patient's father isn't his biological father. Foreman bets $100 on the opposite. House orders a polysomnograph while the patient sleeps. That night, as they run the polysomnograph, the patient dreams that House is cutting off his toes. The EEG confirms the night terrors. All the tests come back normal. They look at the patient's MRI scans. Chase thinks he has viral meningitis, but House knows he is only guessing. However, House has spotted something, an upwards arch in the corpus callosum, the junction between the two brain hemispheres. House orders a radioisotope examination to look for blockage. Foreman prepares Dan for the procedure, and looks at the facial structure of the patient and his father to see if he can prove there are blood relations. They find the blockage and schedule surgery to insert a shunt to drain cerebrospinal fluid. However, the buildup of CSF turns out only to be a symptom. After testing the fluid, they think it might be multiple sclerosis, but there are no lesions and if it is progressing this quickly, it will most likely kill him within 5 years. They break the news to Dan but tell him it will take months to confirm the diagnosis as it is in its early stages, but warn him that the symptoms will get worse. They recommend medication to ease the symptoms and advise him that they are looking for a specialist. The patient goes missing from his room and the team searches for him. They are worried because he had a lumbar puncture to prepare him for the radiological procedure and he should not be moved. They call House at home. House shows up at the hospital and tells Foreman to keep looking and that he's going home. He tells Foreman to check the roof because the orderlies sometimes prop the door open. Chase, Cameron and Foreman run to the roof and find Dan there. The patient seems to be dazed and Chase reassures him, but the patient doesn't know where he is. The doctors realize that Dan believes he's on the lacrosse field. Foreman keeps talking to him as Chase tackles him to keep him from walking off the roof. Foreman tells House that the patient thought he was on the lacrosse field. House thinks that this shows he doesn't have multiple sclerosis. It also means that he probably had a brain infection. Cameron thinks it might be syphilis. House wants to use a dose of penicillin, injected directly into the brain using the existing shunt from the surgery to allow any excess fluid to drain. They start the treatment, but the father doesn't think the patient has ever had sex. Cuddy finds out about the paternity bet. Thinking the father is Dan's biological father, she bets House's attendance at a symposium against a week of clinic duty. They continue the injections on the patient while Chase tries to distract him by directing his attention to Cameron's low-cut blouse. Dan starts having tremors, auditory hallucinations and double vision. They realize the penicillin isn't working. They eliminate just about everything it could be from the mnemonic midnight. House focuses on the night terrors. He orders an EEG, with microphones along his esophagus. House tells Wilson he's missing something. The parents confront House about doing nothing, not even meeting the patient. House tells them he is continuously informed of the patient's condition. He tells the parents to go comfort their son. House plans on using DNA from the parents' coffee cups to test paternity. He bets Wilson double or nothing he is right. House checks in with his team and gives them the DNA to test. The tests are negative, except the paternity test. Neither the father nor mother are biologically related to the patient. House confronts the parents. They admit the patient was adopted. House admits he tested their DNA. The parents say the medical history they gave him was for the biological mother. House asks if the biological mother was ever vaccinated, but they don't know and say that the patient was. House dismisses them. He needs to know what happened in the first 6 months of the patient's life when he was relying on his mother's antibodies like all newborns. The parents don't know. House explains the problem. An infant gets exposed to measles, has symptoms, but in rare cases the measles hides in the brain, subacute sclerosing panencephalitis. It only happens in babies whose mothers haven't had measles. Dan will need interferon injected directly into his brain, but it will kill him if they are wrong. They need a biopsy, but the only way to do it safely is to go in through the eye and biopsy the retina. They do it and the test confirms the diagnosis. Foreman starts to explain the interferon treatment, but stops the technical explanation and simply tells the parents it's dangerous, it could kill him, but they should do it. They agree to proceed and they start the procedure by drilling a hole in Dan's skull. Cuddy and House argue about the cost of the DNA test. They settle it by having House get to take a week off clinic if he pays for the test. House uses the money he won off the team and Wilson. They test the patient, and he easily names several animals that start with the letter O. The patient also says he has known he was adopted for 6 years. Neither of his parents have a cleft chin like he does. House makes a trip to the lacrosse field, where he imagines watching a game. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like and comment. It really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.